There are so many pages in the Phil Steele college football preview. How many in total?
344 this year. It's like a book when you pick that up. It's got a lot of weight to it.
It's a Bible for a college football fan, and now we get to the Big Ten Conference. And let's start with the legends. Any surprises this year in the Big Ten?
I think if you're looking for a surprise, and I'll preface that with, I think there's 5 teams that everybody's going to consider a contender. In the Legends division, it's Michigan, Michigan State, Nebraska. In the Leaders division, it's Ohio State, Wisconsin. So I'll classify a surprise team as one that's outside of those 5. And I would go with Iowa. I don't think they're the most overly talented team, but when you look at their schedule, they don't have to play Ohio State or Wisconsin out of the Leaders division. And if they can beat Nebraska at the season final, I expect all the teams in the Legends division to have 2 losses. If they knock off Nebraska, they would have just 2 losses. Might just sneak into that Big Ten title game. I don't expect it to happen, but if you're looking for a true surprise, I'd have to go with Iowa.
All right, let's start with the Legends division first and predicting the Big Ten.
Well, I've got a 3-way tie right at the top, and it's 3 teams which I can make a great case for, and I can poke a few holes against each one of them. When you look at Michigan State this year, it's defense. They have one of the best defenses in the entire country. Practically the entire unit returns from last year. Offensively, I thought their run game surprised me. They only averaged 3.8 yards per carry last year after averaging 4.5 the previous year. They have a legitimate first-round candidate at running back in Le'Veon Bell. He's running behind a veteran offensive line. I think they get back up to that 4.7, 4.8 yards per carry. Now, they do lose their outstanding quarterback from last year, Kirk Cousins. They also lose their top 4 receivers. So there's your question marks with Michigan State, quarterback and receivers. But I like Andrew Maxwell. I like the receivers that they have coming in. I think they'll do a quality enough job, and I think when you look at Michigan State, they're a true contender. Now, each of the big teams here has to play 2 of the other big boys on the road. Michigan State plays Michigan and Wisconsin on the road. Michigan plays Nebraska and Ohio State on the road, and Nebraska plays Michigan State and Ohio State on the road. That's why I think they'll all end up with 2 losses this year. Now, going to Michigan, I think they basically achieved everything they could achieve last year, getting to 11-2. In fact, if you look at their regular season, they only played 2 ranked teams all season long. So they only beat 1 ranked team all regular season. In the bowl game, they were out first down 22-12 by Virginia Tech. They got outgained almost 2-1, but somehow came out of there with a win. They do have Denard Robinson at quarterback. That's a great thing to start off with. Toussaint, a running back, really emerged down the stretch. And the defense, nobody did a better job as a defense coordinator last year than Greg Mattinson. They trimmed about 130 yards off their defensive yards that allowed on the season. And they actually have the nucleus to have a pretty good defense if that defensive line can come together quickly. They've got a tough schedule, though. They play Alabama, and they also play Notre Dame on the road.
At Notre Dame.
And remember last year's Notre Dame-Michigan game? I watched a replay of it 3 weeks ago. After 3 quarters, you're like, how did Michigan win this football game?
Right.
Because Notre Dame dominated all but the 4th quarter.
Right.
And Denard got that late touchdown. And then, as mentioned, they have to play both Nebraska and Ohio State on the road. That's Ohio State's bowl game at the end of the season.
Sure.
So schedule-wise, I don't think they're going to match the same success they did last year, even though this year's team might be a little bit stronger. And for a little bit of a surprise team out there, I went with Nebraska. Now, Nebraska, in my mind, had the most disappointing defense in college football. I thought when you looked at them last year, they had Jared Crick up front at nose tackle. They had an outstanding linebacker in David, and then they had Denard at cornerback. They had 3 of the top players in the country, and their defense allowed about 360 yards per game last year. I thought they'd be a top 10 defense. This year, all 3 of those players depart. But remember, Crick did get injured early. He got injured about the 4th game. But I think overall, they'll be a better defense despite losing their top players. And offensively, Taylor Martinez must improve upon his passing. They do get Rex Burkhead back at the running back spot. They've got a solid offensive line. You know, as mentioned, just like the other guys, they get 2 of the road games, but their non-conference slate is more manageable than Michigan and Michigan State. So I think if all 3 teams tie for first in the Legends division, I think Nebraska has the best record, and that's why I'm projecting them to get to the Big Ten title game.
A lot of balance there. We go to the Leaders division. Ohio State, of course, will have a bowl ban. They cannot go to a postseason bowl game, but that doesn't mean they're not going to be good. How do you look at the leaders division?
Well, first of all, I do expect a drop from Penn State. This looks like a rebuilding year. New head coach. They only have 9 returning starters. I moved them all the way down to number 5 in that division. I've got Purdue and Illinois as good quality teams. I think Tim Beckman steps into a good situation in Illinois. Remember, Illinois opened 6-0 last year.
Yeah.
And they lost their last 6 games.
Right.
Beckman inherits a pretty talented group. I think Nathan Scheelhaus at quarterback will have a better year. I got to talk to Purdue's coach Danny Hope, and he's glowing with praise for his new defensive coordinator who comes over from the CFL. He loves the schemes. He loves what he's getting out of the players. And Ohio State fans may remember that Purdue game last year where Purdue ended up beating Ohio State at home. So I think Purdue and Illinois are both solid bowl teams. But as far as the actual title in the leaders division goes, it's really between Wisconsin and Ohio State. I think Ohio State, Urban Meyer steps into a great situation. He's got a team that was Big Ten co-champs or champs 6 straight years that's coming off a losing season. Braxton Miller's the perfect fit for the Urban Meyer offense. The defense will be one of the top 5 or 6 units in the entire country. And I think offensively they can only improve after last year's questionable performance. And I think he'll let Braxton Miller throw the football a little bit more. Ohio State does have 2 tough road games this year. They have to play both Wisconsin and Michigan State on the road. I've got Ohio State a slight underdog in both those games, but all the other games I have them favored. So Ohio State's a team capable of 10 or 11 wins this season. And it wouldn't surprise me if they jumped up there and actually won the Big Ten leaders division, despite the fact they're ineligible for it. But the team I went with to win the leaders and get to the Big Ten title game this year is Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin returns Monty Ball at running back. Monty Ball was phenomenal last year, almost 2,000 yards rushing, 30-some-odd touchdowns, NCAA records every week, Heisman Trophy finalist. I think one of the big surprises was when he opted to return. Well, he's running behind my number 14 rated offensive line. Now, they're not in great shape at quarterback, losing Russell Wilson. I thought Russell Wilson was an extraordinary quarterback last year. I believe he had a 37-3 ratio or something in that area. But they do bring in Danny O'Brien from Maryland. Now, Danny O'Brien was the ACC Freshman Player of the Year 2 years ago. Didn't quite adapt to Maryland's offense last year, but he's a better fit for this Wisconsin offense. And defensively, I think Wisconsin's better than last year's defense, which, of course, went to the Rose Bowl and played quite well. But the one big advantage Wisconsin has over Ohio State is they only get one of the big boys on the road this year. They have to play Nebraska on the road. Their other 3 games are Purdue, Indiana, and Penn State. All those in the winnable category. So of all the Big 5 teams in the Big Ten, they're the only one that has one of those games on the road. Therefore, I think they can go 7-1 in the Big Ten, and that may just be good enough to win the Big Ten. And I do believe they're almost a shoo-in, though, to get to the Big Ten title game since Ohio State is ineligible.
Let me bounce this off of you. I said it may be a blessing in disguise for the Ohio State program under Meyer for this bowl ban this year because it will give the Braxton Millers and all these other kids a year to get acclimated to the new schemes, the new style, the philosophy. It also gives Ohio State and Meyer an additional year to get his own kids in there with another recruiting class. And Gene and I took a look ahead to next season, Phil, as I know you do. You project seasons. The schedule in 2013 for Ohio State is incredibly Buckeye-friendly, with only all the tough Big Ten opponents are at home, with the exception of the Michigan game, and the only non-conference challenge is at California early in the season. Am I right or wrong?
I would say you're probably right. I would rather have had the bowl ban last year because they were 6-6. But yeah, if it's this year or next year, I think it is a good fit. And like you said, the schedule's easier next year. Generally, when a first-year head coach comes in, he has to learn the strengths and weaknesses of the players. Players have to learn new schemes. There usually is a little bit of a learning curve. And I do think the Buckeyes drop a game or two. So you're right. They're probably a legitimate national title contender next year, whereas I've never seen a team go from 7 losses to a national championship. We've seen some go from 5 to a national championship, but jumping from 6 and 7 would be a big jump. So you're probably right on the money there, Bruce.
PhilSteele.com, the college football preview. When we return, we are going to pick Phil's brain on not only all of the conference championships, but we'll take a look at the Heisman race, and we will also then get his projections on the bowl games, including the national championship.